We're joined this afternoon by Renée Battle Brooks. She is an assistant state's attorney for Prince George's County in Maryland. And Renée has spent the last several years dedicated to prosecuting those who are engaged in human trafficking, as well as being a victim's advocate for human trafficking. Renée, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Tell us about how you got into this work. You're a prosecutor, so your job is to go after the bad guys. But somehow, in going after the bad guys, you're also helping the good guys.
Well, it's interesting, you know, I never planned for this. When I look back, I see it's absolutely God leading and pushing me where He wanted. I'd been with the office for about 4 months when the chief of the circuit court came to me and said there was an opening in child abuse, sexual assault unit, and that my name had come up and what I consider. And inside I'm thinking, oh no, 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 no. It was never anything that I was interested in. And I was in the narcotics unit. And so I did, you know, the tap dance, so I want to be a team player and whatever the office needs and, you know, whatever. But inside I'm thinking, no, no, no. So I left and I didn't hear anything and I thought, okay. Then I went on an orchestra trip for a month. And when I came back, I'd been transferred to the sexual assault unit. But it was exactly where God wanted me.
And you say that why?
Because I really got to see the interaction of evil. And, you know, I think the devil uses, this is my personal opinion, I think he uses child abuse and sexual assault as a mechanism to really create a wedge. Because if you think about it, the model that we have is God the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and how that model has been put here for us. And if you can, on a human level, sever part of what that model looks like with a family or a person in authority, somebody's spiritual health is damaged, and it takes so much to get them back to where they even trust or believe in God or trust people. And so my work, those 12 years in the child abuse and sexual assault unit, really allowed me to have interaction with our survivors and to kind of, you know, give them hope and to kind of infuse. And really I felt that we were at war.
Human trafficking is a relatively new term. And help us understand, what is the difference between what we've commonly called prostitution and human trafficking? Is it one and the same, or is it different?
It's not different, but the legal definition of human trafficking is it has to be force, fear, or coercion, and there has to be an exchange of sexual services for something of value. So if you look at it like that, it requires that there is someone that is brokering or moving or forcing someone to do it. Do it meaning prostitution or sexual services for money. You do, however, have some people that don't have pimps that engage in the act of sexual services for money. And so they're together, but also separate. But I know that some people have this idea that if you engage in sexual acts for money, prostitution, that somehow if you do it on your own, that you're not worthy of compassion and that somehow you've made that decision. But I would urge people to consider the fact that a lot of people that engage in that, whether on their own or not, are victims too, and you don't know what has led them to that point.
Well, let's put a face on human trafficking. How many people are we talking about? And kind of break it down for us in terms of who are these people?
The survivors? The victims?
The victims. And is the victims and survivors synonymous?
Yes, and it's interesting. I don't like to call people victims because to me that means that the perpetrator won. I like to call them victim and survivors. And speaking with survivors, though, some say, you know, we're always on the journey to surviving and don't like the word survivor. It's very interesting depending on who you speak with. Our victim survivors come in all shapes, sizes, races, ages, economic levels, education, you name it. There's not one way that a survivor looks, because if you understand that this human trafficking is motivated by money and greed, predators are going to go and look for victims wherever they come. And they're college students, they're people that come from wealthy backgrounds, there are people that come from law enforcement backgrounds, there are people that come from low income. It doesn't matter. Men, women, children, it doesn't matter.
Average age for someone to become involved?
Well, the average age of recruiting, depending on where you look, there are different statistics, but between 11 and 13 is the average age for recruiting. And the people that are recruiting don't look like, you know, we have this idea that the pimp is this person with the velvet hat and the purple and the cane. The pimp looks like you. The pimp looks like me. The pimp looks like that little boy that lives down the street, that grandmother that lives in, you know, 2 houses away, that middle-aged woman that's always dressed impeccably. I had someone tell me a story recently. They were at a resort in Maryland, and a place where families go, and it's known, it's out in the middle of nowhere, and these 6th, 7th grade girls were down at the docks, and this high-powered speedboat came in, and this woman got out dressed really beautifully, and just, you know, nothing that you would fear. And she was talking to the 3 girls, and she kept trying to get them to come in the boat. Wouldn't that be nice? Come have a ride. And the little girl that was telling the story, something was talking to her. And she's like, no, I don't think we want to do that. And her friends are like, no, come on, let's go. This would be fun. It's a closed community. And so the friend, the girl that's telling the story, kept backing away, saying no, and pulling her friends. And when it became clear that they weren't, 2 guys jumped out of the boat and started chasing them. They ran, they told their parents, and the boat got away. Now, we don't know exactly what would have happened, but I surmise what. And so my point is that recruiters, pimps, they come in all shapes and sizes.
How do we recognize them?
Well, I suppose if we could recognize them, we could solve this problem.
Is there behavior?
There's behavior, but I think what you have to recognize is, I think we have to be cautious. If someone approaches you or is overly friendly, or, I don't know, examples in the mall. Malls are great places where they recruit. And what recruiters or pimps will look for is that child that seems to sort of hang back or is with the group but not really part of the group. Yeah. Right? They're going to pick the vulnerable one. And so they may come up to a little girl and say, oh, you look really nice today. And if she's kind of like, oh, you know, you think so? Well, then that's the next step. Or the one that says, yeah, I know. Thank you. They're not going to bother with her.
You're going to go after the one that seems most vulnerable.
Absolutely. And so, you know, you've heard some of these predators talking, and absolutely, the girl that maybe is the tallest and kind of with the group but hanging back, kind of, you know, shoulders slumped. Predators are smart. And they know how to read people, and they know they can size up a group, and they know which one to start making inroads. They'll always do a little test to see how they respond.
Like, what are they looking for?
They're looking for someone they can control, someone that will be susceptible to whatever it is they're going to tell them. They're going to try and figure out what that child needs, what that adult needs, and tell them they're going to supply it. That's how they operate. So if they sense vulnerability, like in me, if they sense, oh, you know, I'm a chocoholic. If they sense that's my vulnerability, they're going to tell me I can have all the chocolate I want.
Or if they see a little girl looking in a window, or a little boy.
That's absolutely.
Because it's
longing to, exactly, at something.
Right.
Oh, you like that bike?
Let me buy that for you.
Oh, I can show you how to, you know,
right.
Yeah.
Let's put a number on this. When we talk about the number of children, because I want to focus on them for just a moment, children that are involved in human trafficking, what kind of numbers are we looking at?
Well, again, the thing with numbers, you can find different numbers. So one statistic or number that I saw suggests that 100,000 children are exploited in the United States, and that this one study that I showed, that exploitation is the largest number of any countries in the world, United States of America. So this problem is domestic. It is here. It is not. When we think of human trafficking, we think of women mainly being smuggled across the border. We have that. But this is a domestic problem. I can say in the county that I work in Prince George's County, what we are seeing Our average age is between 18 and 21. Females, domestic, a lot of them are from the county.
But I heard that also, numbers you can find, but they can be as young as 11?
Oh, absolutely.
12. They recruit in middle
Oh,
school?
absolutely. You have to remember there's an appetite in this country for children, to have sex with children. There is an appetite, and it's not going away. And I saw that in my child abuse years. It is not going away. And so traffickers know that there's a premium price. They can charge a lot more the younger the child is.
And an average child who is in the business for a year, their pimp can profit off of that?
Yes, again,
How
a
much?
statistic shows that if you have one child in your stable, it's called, you can make $1 million cash without paying taxes a year. One child. Remember their quotas, this whole, the dynamic, their quotas that people have to make. You don't get to go to sleep or eat until you've made $5,000 tonight. It's a cruel business.
How do the average length of stay in the life, I'm sure it varies, but the average length of stay in the life is?
Well, it's interesting. So there's studies. Remember, once you reach mid-20s, late 20s, 30 it's interesting. So the way it works, and this is just from my perspective, you recruit them young, you want to keep them as young as you can, right? Because that's the product that people will buy. And in order to get them to do these things, you have to keep them pumped up with drugs, alcohol, so that they can do it. So you deaden their mind. So you get these children you get them addicted to substances, and so it becomes this perpetual roller coaster, or this will. And so they become 20, 21, 22, 25. If they've been in the life since 12, they're pretty damaged, right? So they're not going to be able to get that money for that 25-year-old who probably looks a lot older now. And so they either cast her out or cast him out, and now maybe they have to work on the streets because they have to now feed their addiction as well. So sometimes, even if they no longer have a pimp, and that's when people look at them, well, you have a choice, they really don't anymore, because now they're trying to feed the drug addiction that was forced on them. And so average life, I don't know.
So it's a
30, 31. I see women trying to get out of the life, 30, 31, but they don't get out on their own necessarily. Right. Sometimes it's the intervention of the court. They've been arrested once too much, and finally they've had enough, and they're willing to come forward and talk.
And about how many of these cases have you dealt with, do you deal with regularly?
Oh, I can't even put a number. I mean, there are lots of investigations that maybe don't lead to prosecution because we just don't have all of the evidence that we need. We know what it is, but we can't get people to testify against the pimp. I can tell you one story of she was 31, and we just concluded her case, and she and her pimp had regularly in the county, when I looked back and looked at all of our databases, they were always linked, always linked. She would get charged with prostitution, he would get charged as the pimp, but there was never enough evidence because she wouldn't testify against him. We knew that he rented the room, and he probably set up the dates, probably posted the ads, but without her saying it. So he would always walk, she would get charged, which is horrible because it is very unfair.
She's the victim.
Correct. But she doesn't self-identify. So there was a sting that was recently where, again, the police went, found on the back page, answered the ad. So when they get to the hotel, they see him outside. They see he's in a van and that there's a 2-, 3-, and 4-year-old in the car. Actually, I'm sorry, it was 1, 2, and 3. And so as the story unfolds, she gets arrested, they arrest him, and it turns out that those children are his. She has been, and I only know this because she actually approached us through her attorney. She said that she wanted to talk to me in a proffer session, meaning with a lawyer there, and she wanted to give information. At 31, she was finally tired. She had had 2 pimps in her life. This guy for 5 years, and then another guy for however many years that was. And I asked, how is it that you found yourself in this situation? She came from a great family, things got hard, She had a fight with her family. She left, and somebody approached her, lured her in, and that's how it started. And so she tells it. She talks about the addiction and how he had her doing all of these things. He had her working at a nightclub, a strip club, when she up until 8 months pregnant. He wouldn't let her stop. Now, mind you, you think, oh, well, he's the father of her children. It is not that. That is a way to control her, to have those children. He doesn't think of those children as his children. That's just another tool to use against her. She disclosed that actually one of the children, and one of the reasons I will say that she wanted to talk to us is because there was a custody fight going on. So let me back up. When the police came, they took her in one car. They arrested him, took him in another car, and so the children were there. They had all of their belongings. Those children had been living in the hotels as Mama was doing what Papa was making her do. And they had like a little turtle in a trash can. They had a little dog, and the children were underdeveloped. They were nonverbal for the most part. And so social services was called. They came in. And so as the detective is taking her in the car, an undercover car, handcuffed in a minivan, that's what the undercover was, she actually was so upset and so enraged that she kicked the steering wheel, causing an accident, and the police officer was injured, and she actually broke both of her pelvic bones, the young lady that I was talking with. And so this is how the story evolved. So she told me, so both of the children were taken away because they were arrested for human trafficking, for, engaging in the business. So the children went to foster care. He was fighting to get the kids, not because he wanted the kids, but because he wanted to use them. And she disclosed that one of the children actually was not his. She was pretty sure. And I said, well, does he know? She goes, yes. She was raped by one of her customers, Johns, or as our victim survivors, they don't like them to be called Johns because that makes them human. And they think those are the ones that have victimized them, so they call them the trick. So had raped her, and the pimp would not allow her to get an abortion because he didn't believe in that. And so she came to me not wanting a deal for herself, but she wanted to make sure that if he got the children, she was certain that he would take that one child who for sure was not his at a young age and put her in the life at a young age.
Because
it's just a product. It's
greed.
Oh, absolutely greed. He can make money off of that child.
You said something in your story that you said Backpage.
Yes.
What is Backpage?
So Backpage.com is a site on a line where things are sold. But also as a component, there's this, what is it called? Personal ads. It's not the word, I can't quite remember the word right now, but you go on there and post. Now, kind of like Craigslist,
right.
Backpages, and there are many other sites. If you were to go on Backpage right now and look in this area, you could see who was up posting. So they post, but they use clever words that aren't really clever. They call them dates. And roses, it'll cost 120 roses or whatever. It's all in code, but it's not code. It's so blatant. And so anybody that answers those ads absolutely knows that this is the act of prostitution.
And the ads are put out by the
pimps, right? And so they take pictures and they post, and it's yes, that's the mechanism that is used. It is no longer, although you do have tracks on the street, most of it is done on cyber.
Social media.
Social media, cyber, internet.
What role has social media played?
It's huge. It's a place where predators go to find victims. It's a place where business is conducted. It's a place where they talk about what they're doing, they communicate, they brag. Every pimp has a video. They make a video. And you can go on YouTube, and they always flash their money. They call them a stack. It's part of what they do. They're representing.
So what should parents be looking for with their children and as they enter the social media era, as they grow older, 10, 11, 12? What do you suggest?
Do not give your children free rein on social media. You need to watch. You need to have their password. You need to check to see who they're communicating with. you know, it seems to be popular to accept all the friend requests so that you can brag that you have 6,000 friends. Those are predators, some of them, I am absolutely without a doubt. You should not accept friends who you don't know. Snapchat. Snapchat is a place where kids are going now. But Snapchat has a geo-tracking on it. And so if you don't disable it, a predator can friend you and you can communicate and can see exactly where you are. Yes.
And find you at
Absolutely.
any time.
It's right there.
Wow.
So you have to, in other words, you have to watch your children. You cannot allow them access to the internet unfettered. It's just unsafe.
Wow.
I think you have to tell them, you know, I think all of us, you know, we don't want to be rude to people. We don't want to, you know, but if somebody approaches you, you have to wonder, why are they approaching? If somebody compliments you, you can accept the compliment in a way that says thank you, but that's it.
Right. Are there questions that people should ask themselves when approached by a stranger, especially teenagers, especially the young people?
Yeah. What does this person want? Why are they talking to me? You know, it could just be friendly. There are friendly people. Friendly people, there are lonely people, people that strike up conversations, that's fine. But, you know, there are boundaries.
And you don't give information.
Oh, absolutely not. You don't give any personal information. I wouldn't even give a last name.
And these seem like relatively simple questions. But the fact of the matter is, when you are vulnerable, when there's something missing in your life, and there seems to be someone there that can pay attention to you provide you something, what then you begin to disclose becomes more than probably you normally would.
That's exactly.
So name, phone number, certainly not address.
Absolutely.
Not email even.
Right. Now, and these are people we're talking about that approach you in person, but people that approach you online, you really don't know if they are who they say they are. So you may think that you are best friends, and you know in this age, it's always amazing to me how young people say, oh, that's my friend, that's my best friend. I went, oh, that's awesome. How long have you known them? 2 weeks. And I'm not exaggerating. So they approach people online, and the picture that they're sending them could be the face of a 14-year-old who's friending another 14-year-old. It turns out that's not who it is at all. It's some older man, you know, and so you disclose. So children need to know and understand that just because somebody, you know, online says, but that is the cunning, that is the predatory behavior to get in, figure out. Again, they just, they go on Facebook and they throw out, as I call it, you know, they fish and they reel in whoever's, yep.
What are some of the most important things that people ought to know about the prevalence of trafficking and the effects of trafficking?
Trafficking is everywhere. It is everywhere. It is, as I say, you know, this job makes you think and look at things differently. And when I get on a plane, I always look around to wonder how many on the plane with me are being trafficked. You know, who is the pimp? Who is the victim survivor? You know, sometimes you have victim survivors who are on, I think it's called auto or automatic, where they have built up so much trust with the pimp that the pimp controls it from 3 states away, and they're on the plane by themselves. They're, you know, being sent out. But just because that pimp isn't physically there does not mean that they're not still being controlled. So it's everywhere. Hotels, I don't care what price point it is. The 5-star hotels, it's there. You know, the economy hotels, it's there. It's in restaurants. Those could be places. There's a McDonald's that I know of that is the point of, you know, contact where the brokering goes on. It's in cars. They're car services. It is in businesses. You have to assume that it's everywhere without being paranoid. And so if things don't quite fit in a scenario, you have to ask yourself, what's really going on?
How do you recognize it?
You have to trust your intuition, your gut. Things that don't seem to fit. High traffic patterns. Again, a yoga studio where, you know, there are classes, so everybody should pretty much come at the same time and leave at the same time. But somebody noticed that there were men that were coming in 10, 15-minute intervals, the traffic. And so he asked himself, what's going on here? That's not a yoga studio. Massage parlors, right? Legitimate, even brand massage places. It may not be the entire places that all of us have gone to. I won't give names. I don't want to get sued.
Chains.
Chains, right. They're not engaged, but some of their workers may be. We've done investigations. So remember, if it's greed, so you have to think, if it's a massage parlor, you don't get 10 or 15-minute massages. Aren't those for half-hour increments, or right? But it's about speed. So it's everywhere. Of course, it's in nightclub entertainment industries.
But so you're saying it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
There's never one thing that you can pinpoint, or is there? I mean, now that my awareness has been raised and I now look at a crowd a bit more differently, is there something that I can look at, or in a crowd, eye avoidance or eye contact, or something that I can sense, know, or just trust my gut?
Trust your gut, but I mean, there are rules in the life. There are rules. And we won't get into them here, but one of the rules, well, there's one rule that says, you know, if you're the property of this pimp, you're not supposed to look another pimp or somebody else in the eye. You know, you always have to keep your eyes down. You may see this exchange where somebody's not looking somebody else, or, you know, their behaviors. And I know I'm not giving you anything concrete. It's just being aware of a dynamic that doesn't seem to fit.
Right. And that's just being aware and
exactly.
Trusting your gut.
And you know that most of our communication is nonverbal.
Exactly.
And so start reading body language. It will tell you an awful lot. You can tell if somebody's not comfortable if you start paying attention. You see things, and again, you may not be able to articulate exactly what is happening, but your brain is already processed, and your gut or your intuition has told you something is not right. You have to learn to trust that.
And what do you do with that?
Call the police, call somebody, be observant. If you see them getting in a car, take a license tag, and make, model, whatever, anything, just something so that you can call and say, I don't know what's going on here, but there's something wrong with this picture.
Right.
You know, we had somebody who saw sort of an exchange at a Dunkin' Donuts. She was going in, and a young lady was coming out, and this guy was, you know, kind of aggressive, and she seemed a little bit hesitant, and she had her, you know, her bag. A lot of times they'll have, like, you know, their suitcase with them because they're going from place to place, a little rolly suitcase. And something wasn't quite right, and she'd gone to sort of an awareness education on human trafficking, and so she called the police, and she gave a license number, and then she followed up to make sure. So I just think that the more eyes and ears we have out there, people watching, yes, maybe everything that's called in is not that. It could be domestic, it could be something, just a relationship that was, you know, hitting a rough spot in front of people. But I would ask that don't ignore it. If you don't want to involve yourself for safety or because you don't know how, at least do something, whether it's calling the police, calling school if you see something outside, call, make a report, and let those who deal in that take care of it.
Do you think the media plays a role in this?
I think the media can. Social media or media?
Media.
Yes, I think you guys can absolutely help get the word out. Keep that education piece. I cannot underplay the importance of awareness, because if more people become aware, then what is happening in front of our very noses, it is harder to take place. And so it's almost replicating ourselves. Everybody talk to people, educate people into the things that you know, and the more eyes and ears we have out there, people watching, it's a way to start stemming this tide.
What role can parents, teachers play in helping or informing at-risk children? Because from what I hear you say, Renee, all children are at risk. It doesn't matter what kind of background you come from. So what should parents be teaching their children, or teachers be saying in the classroom?
There should be constant awareness. And I know that in our county we have been able to get through the health module a human trafficking awareness. It's in high schools. I've been pushing to get it into middle schools because that's where they're the most vulnerable. You know, there's some political implications and pushback because parents don't want their kids to know about that, but kids should know.
They do know.
Yes, exactly, whether the parents think they do.
Exactly.
You know, it makes me think of a story where a teacher had noticed this child in school, and she didn't have the latest fashion and was studious but, you know, not engaged. And over the summertime, she saw her at a restaurant, and all of a sudden she had her nails and hair done, and she had on clothes, and she had, this air of a little bit more confidence, and she was with an older man, and a light bulb went on. Yes, it could have been a relative, it could have been her father, but everything changed. So I think you should be aware of changes in behavior. You asked about signs, parents, changes in your child's behavior. Are they more aggressive? Are they less aggressive? Are they more reserved? Can you account for things that they have in the house? Mm-hmm. Where did those gifts come from? Where did you buy it for them? Mm-hmm. Did they have enough money saved up to purchase that? Getting hairs and nails done is expensive. So where's it coming from? Parents have to be parents.
Pay attention.
They have to pay attention. They have to be parents 24/7.
Monitor their social media.
Monitor the social media. Monitor the friends.
Their phones.
Absolutely.
As a prosecutor, what age are phones, social media access? Is there an appropriate age?
Well, Renee, yeah, that's tough. I think that if you give them a phone, this is me, you have to monitor. You either, I think phones are dangerous. I understand the need for them. I do.
But somehow we got along with them.
We did.
We were
really
okay.
Did. Yep. I mean, 6, 7. I don't think there's a need. 10, probably not. 12, maybe. But if you give it to them, don't have internet access. Don't give them a phone. Have it just a phone. Give them a flip phone, if it's just for that. There's no reason to have all the other things that they can text and start getting involved in things that. And
this might get a little technical. What about to be able to find them where they are?
Yeah.
Important? Not important.
Well, sure. As a parent, the GPS tracker.
Right.
Sure.
If somebody wants to get involved, we're in Kansas City at the Hear Their Voices event, where they are bringing awareness in this community. What would you encourage people to do who want to get involved, who are just becoming aware of the effects of human trafficking, being able to put a human face on it?
Right.
How would you encourage people who want to become involved to get involved?
I would call Veronica's Voice. I'm sure that they have probably volunteer things for people to get involved. I think that, churches can organize and ask people to come in to educate. I think, there's also street level involvement, but that requires a lot of training, and there's so many factors that go into that.
But there are different levels.
There are absolutely different levels. Everybody can become involved, whether it's just making yourself aware and then committing to telling 20 other people. Whether, there are lots of levels of involvement. Mm-hmm. I would check with the local government, because they also may have programs that you can volunteer. I would check with the hospitals, because a lot of times they have victim advocate programs where when people present sexual assaults or other things where they pair victims. I would contact the local state's attorney's office, because they may have volunteer victim programs where you can become trained and be that advocate and be that person that helps somebody through the process.
For people who are in the life,
mm-hmm.
but they're trying to get out, what do you suggest? How do you help them? How does the community help them?
Make that phone call. Don't be afraid. A lot of times, we're all humans, and so we care what people think about us. And so sometimes that stigma is so great in their head that they won't reach out. They're afraid to reach out. They're afraid of the rejection. They're afraid of how people will judge them. But if you're in the life and you want help, there's help there. You just have to reach out.
To anybody?
To anybody. Call the national hotline. Reach out.
What is the national hotline?
888-3737-888.
Repeat that one more time.
888-3737-888.
And finally, as a church, how would you encourage their faith-based initiatives across the nation? And this isn't something, as I heard you say once before, this is a domestic national issue.
Yes.
It's not regional, it is everywhere.
That's right.
How can people, churches, community, how do we get involved on a national level? What should our churches, what would you encourage our churches to do? You say that human trafficking is everywhere. I presume that means schools, homes,
Yes.
churches?
Yes.
What can we do?
This sounds really simple. But the first thing we have to do is love our children. We cannot afford to create a space where a predator can come in. So we have to love our children. We have to give our children, boys and girls, a sense of self-worth. We have to let them know that they're children of God and that, there's not anything there that cannot be conquered with God's help. We have to instill that in them so that when the devil comes knocking, because that's who it is, that they're not vulnerable to whatever the seduction or whatever the trick is that is trying to pull them out. Child sexual abuse seems to be, when studies are looked at of our victim survivors, the one thing that they have in common, that they were all victims of child sexual abuse. So if we could stop child sexual abuse, curb that, and that means the same things, being vigilant, watching your children, looking for signs. Just because somebody says they're a preacher or a teacher or a physician or a lawyer or any profession, that does not mean that they also do not have evil in them. And I say that in that, there's some of the biggest pimps are ministers. Yes, known, run their organizations, and yes. And so, yes, sorry, didn't mean to.
I'm sorry, yes. Let me get that shocked look off my face.
We have to, just because somebody represents that they are something doesn't mean that that is who they are.
Right.
So we have to remember where we come from as Christians and people of faith, right? So the only thing or person we can trust is God first. And then, so when you ask what churches can do, we have to be aware of the issues. We have to be aware that there may be victim survivors amongst us. We have to be aware. We have to be willing to open ourselves to learn, to not be judgmental. We haven't even talked about our LGBTQ community. That is within all denominations, that as denominations we're not dealing with. Some are, some aren't. And that we are shunning and we are pushing some of those that are most vulnerable out. We're not creating a space where they feel welcome and loved and where they can come and worship. And so what we can do, we can follow what God says. We can love, and if we love and trust, we can conquer everything. So being aware, setting up programs, just having a thoughtful process where we are going to address this and tackle it. And there are people out there that can help. But it's asking, that's the first.
Finding out where
exactly.
that help comes from.
Exactly.
Renée Battle Brooks, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of the 100,000 children that are victims of human trafficking. And we will keep our eyes open.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.